Hi friends, I hope that you're doing good. I hope you've had a good week. Hope you enjoyed your Christmas and all of that, all of those festivities. But also, I just enjoy the week between Christmas and New Year's. It's just a slower pace. All the festivities are done from Christmas and leading up to New Year's. So not sure when you're watching this, if it's on New Year's Eve day or New Year's Day or sometime after. But whenever it is, hope you've had a good New Year's celebration as well. Anyways, I want to pick up on something that I talked about last week in our video. Do you remember last week I referred to Matthew 1:23 when it says, the virgin will conceive child, she'll give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us, right? And then remember I said that John picked up on this God with us language when in John 1:14, he said the Word, which is referring to Jesus, became flesh and dwelt among us. That Jesus became flesh and dwelt among us. Now, you know, we've said this a number of times before, that sometimes it's hard to translate into the English language things that were originally said. Sometimes culturally it doesn't translate, and other times linguistically it doesn't translate. And this is a good example of something that doesn't translate very well into the English language. When John said that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, the word that John used there was tabernacled. The Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. And so for you and I today, we go tabernacled among us. That's a weird thing to say. Why would John say that? Well, for the Jewish reader, at the time, they would have immediately connected the dots when John said that Jesus became flesh and tabernacled among us. They would have immediately thought back to the Old Testament tabernacle, right? So in the book of Exodus, God gave Moses very specific instructions on how to build the tabernacle, which was a tent, right? And, there were 10 layers of curtains with finely twisted linen and yarn, and the dimensions were very, very specific. And then, excuse me for clearing my throat, and then in Exodus 40, verse 34, that after the tabernacle was completed, it says, then the cloud covered the tabernacle, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. For the very first time in human history, there was a place that a person could go to where the glory of the Lord dwelt, right? There was a specific point on earth where God's presence lived. And of course, we know the story that whenever God's presence, the cloud, or at nighttime, the pillar of fire lifted from the tabernacle and moved, then, the children of Israel followed, and they put down the tabernacle again, and then the glory of the Lord settled on that spot. And but it's interesting if you follow the progression kind of through history in a sense. For the very first time, Moses built a tent, and the presence of the Lord, the glory of the Lord dwelt in that tent. And then, of course, they moved into Israel, into the Promised Land, and they built a permanent structure, right? And so the temple became the spot, the place on earth where you would go to Jerusalem, and that was the place where the presence of the Lord, the glory of the Lord dwelt. And then, of course, as you progress through history, the Jewish people ran into some troubles, and the tabernacle was torn down, and they were booted out of Israel. And so did I say tabernacle? The temple was torn down, and they were booted out of Israel. And so then no place on earth was there a spot where a person would say, that is where the glory of the Lord dwells, right? But then Israel goes through a period of darkness where God goes silent, and they're very difficult between the Old Testament and the intertestamental period. And then Jesus shows up, and John uses this language very specifically. Jesus shows up and tabernacled among his people, right? This was not just the presence of God, but this was God himself. God himself, the glory of God, dwelt in this tabernacle in this human tent of flesh and blood, right? So do you see where John is connecting the dots from the Old Testament tabernacle to Jesus's flesh and blood body, where the presence of God, where God himself in all of his glory dwelt in that human tent of Jesus's body. Okay, so now you progress a little bit further through history, and Jesus, of course, is killed, and then he eventually goes back to heaven. But he didn't leave us alone. He says he left us the Holy Spirit. And when Jesus left us his Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit dwells within us. And now there's not a place in Jerusalem or some other place where the tabernacle tent was, as it moved around. There's not a specific place where the glory of God dwells. The glory of God dwells within us, each of us followers of Jesus, right? And I think it's very interesting that in 2 Corinthians 5:1, that Paul excuse me for my throat, it's very interesting in 2 Corinthians 5:1 that Paul picks up on this tent language and says that our bodies are tents, right? So are you tracking with me? The tabernacle is a tent where the glory of God dwells. Jesus is the tabernacled among us. And now Paul refers to our bodies as human tents. 2 Corinthians 5:1, New Living Translation, for we know that when this earthly tent we live in is taken down, and then Paul clarifies, that is when we die, kind of thing. But look at what Paul has to say leading up to chapter 5, verse 1, when he refers to our bodies as tents. He uses language that talks about us reflecting the glory of the Lord. Right? Okay, so remember the tabernacle, the glory of the Lord dwelt. In Jesus' human earthly tent, tabernacle, the glory of the Lord, God himself dwelt. And in 2 Corinthians 3:18, talks about, we followers of Jesus, we can see and reflect the glory of the Lord, and the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him, listen to this, as we are changed into his glorious image. As we are changed into his glorious image. So do you see how the tabernacle tent was the place where the glory of the Lord dwelt? Jesus's earthly human flesh and blood tent was where the glory of the Lord dwelt. And now we human beings, followers of Jesus, are the place where we reflect the glory of the Lord, and we are changed into his glorious image. Do you remember a few weeks ago I talked about our Imago Dei, that we've been created in the image of God, going back to Genesis. Let us create man in our image, right? We have been created as beautiful creations of God in his image. And so when, as beautiful creations of God, we have been created to reflect the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace. We've been created to reflect God's beautiful image. But we talked about this a few weeks ago, that along the way, life happens and sin happens. And that beautiful image that we've been created as gets marred and gets broken apart a little bit, and creating exiles and using IFS, internal family system language. But that beautiful image that God created us as gets marred and broken apart. But friends, listen to me. You are not defined by those broken off pieces. You're not defined by those marred pieces. You are defined as a beautiful creation. You are created in the image of God. And so at the very core of your being, you are a beautiful creation, right? And we see this language again in how Paul leads up to chapter 5, verse 1, when he talks about this earthly tent. And he talks about that the real you on the inside of you is created, again, 3:18, to reflect the glory of the Lord, and we're changed into his glorious image. Can I read on? So that was chapter 3, but let me read on in chapter 4 and pick up some other things that Paul is saying. Chapter 4, verse 6, for God, who said, "Let there be light in the darkness," made his light shine in our hearts, so we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus Christ. Did you catch that? Let his light shine in our hearts so we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus Christ. We now have this light within our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This tent of ours contains a beautiful, great treasure of the glory of God. But Paul recognizes that, we all face challenges, we all face life, and life is full of problems, right? And that's why in verse 16, he goes on to say, that's why we never give up. Though our bodies are dying, our spirits are being renewed every day. For our present troubles are small and won't last very long, yet they produce for us a glory that vastly outweighs them and will last forever. Isn't that beautiful? That yes, we have challenges in life, but the glory that is within us, and we're being renewed, but the glory that is within us vastly outweighs them and will last forever. And then in the very, I think maybe a verse later, Paul goes on to chapter 5, verse 1, when he says, for we know that when this earthly tent we live in is taken down, that is when we die and leave this earthly body, we will have a house in heaven, an eternal body made for us by God himself, not by human hands. Friends, my point is this, and I hope this is what you hear. My point is this, that this flesh and blood that you see in front of you is not the real Dale Tollefson. The real Dale Tollefson lives inside, and the real Dale Tollefson has been built to reflect the glory and the beauty of God, right? This flesh and blood is not the real me. The real me lives inside, and the real me is eternal. And one day, when you hear that Dale Tollefson has died, using the words of D.L. Moody, don't believe them, friends. One day when you hear that I have died, don't believe them, because on that day I will be more alive than ever, friends. The real me will live on. This earthly shell, this earthly tent is going to die one day. My heart is going to stop beating, but the real me will live on. And the real me will be more in touch on that day with the beauty and the glory that God created me, the glorious person that God created, will be more in touch on that day, on the day that I die, friends. And so, listen, I hope that you hear me, that the real you is a beautiful creation. You have been created, friends, to reflect the glory and the beauty of Christ. And the real you is not this shell that you see on the inside. The real you lives beyond, when this shell passes away. Okay? Friends, since we're not gathering in person this week, I thought I would finish with a worship song that we can engage in. And this worship song says that, that I am not defined by other things. I am defined by you. I am who you say I am, right? So let's just engage with this worship song for a moment, and then I'll come back and wrap up.
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me his love for me. Realized he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
So I hope that this has been meaningful for you. I hope this teaching will make a difference in your day and maybe change the way that you view yourself, maybe change the way that you view some challenges that you're facing. But I do hope that this has been a meaningful time for you. God bless you, friends. We'll see you again, not this Sunday, January 1, but we'll see you on Sunday, January 8, okay, at Latcham Hall. God bless you. Have a fantastic day.